What's up? This is Tom Froming from Twins Daily. Let's talk about whether or not the Chicago White Sox have put themselves in a place where they can be a contender for the AL Central title in 2020. This evening, it was announced by Jeff Passan of ESPN that the White Sox have signed Dallas Keuchel, a nice veteran addition to their rotation. Definitely also did not get him for a deal, I would say. 3 years, $55.5 million is the contract. It could potentially be 4 years and $74 million. Pretty amazing for a guy who sat out unwanted so long on the market last offseason and just sort of continues a trend of spending that we have not seen the previous two off seasons. But that's kind of another discussion. Let's talk about what this means to the White Sox. All right, let's get real nerdy here, breaking out the spreadsheets, as I like to do. What we have here is the Twins on the left, and we're breaking this down by wins above replacement. This is all per Fangraphs. So as you can see here, Twins on the left, White Sox on the right. And the interesting thing to point out is the White Sox actually had more 5-win players than the Twins did. The Twins didn't have any in 2019. So Lucas Giolito and Yoan Moncada, two of the, you can make the argument that they're two of the premier players in baseball when you think about it that way. However, those two guys were also Chicago's only two 4+ win players, whereas the Twins had 5 of those guys, and it kind of keeps getting the point I'm trying to show here is depth. The White Sox, yes, they have some primo talent, but they were severely lacking in depth in 2019. The Twins had 6 3+ WAR players, White Sox 3, Twins 12 2+, White Sox just 6, and then 18 to 11 in 1+ WAR players. So that already makes a pretty good illustration, but let's break it down by group of players. The Twins, 31 wins above replacement from their hitters. White Sox was just 11. That was by far the biggest area of concern with them, because the rotation, it's not that ridiculous of a split. The Twins 16.6, White Sox 9.6, and then the bullpen there's another big gap, 7.3 to 2.7. So an interesting thing to point out is we talked about how Giolito and Moncada were 5+ win players. Well, that means basically they accounted for Moncada accounted for half of the hitter WAR, and Giolito half of the rotation WAR. So that illustrates to you how little else combined from everybody else the White Sox got outside of those two superstars that they have on their roster. And then at the end of the day, when you add all those up, you have the Twins accruing a grand total of 54.9 WAR, while the White Sox were at 23.3. Now, a lot of people, WAR is a one-shot stat. I think if you're only going to go with one number, I think it's the best number to hone in on. And this illustrates, I think, pretty well when you see the Twins won 101 games, the White Sox only 72, and there is that big of a gap in wins above replacement. I think that's a pretty decent illustration on how the math is working out and tying into literal wins. Can a team jump from 23.3 wins to 54.9 wins? That's what the White Sox are going to try to do, essentially, in a way, to try to catch the Twins. Well, let's take a look at the 2018 Minnesota Twins, who went 78-84, not too far off from the 72-89 White Sox in 2019. And just comparing these two teams, the hitting, the Twins 16 to 11 against the 2019 White Sox, rotation just about the same, bullpen just about the same. And the 2018 Twins accrued a grand total of 27.9 wins above replacement, not too far off from the White Sox in 2019. So basically, when we are talking about whether or not the White Sox can make a jump into the upper echelon of the AL Central, I think, you really only have to look back at the 2018 Twins and what they did in 2019. That's exactly what needs to happen for the White Sox. They need to have a good offseason like the Twins had, and they need to have a bunch of their younger players take a step forward. When we talk about those young players on the White Sox, I've already mentioned Giolito and Moncada. Those guys have already taken the leap. So that's sort of a trouble spot for me. Yes, they have they have many other young players who've shown promise. Eloy Jimenez jumps out. Reynaldo Lopez jumps out. There's many, many more. So I'm not saying those are the only two guys that have that potential, but you've already seen Giolito and Moncada break out. Tim Anderson had a great year. How much further do you expect him to go from last year? So it's not a situation where they're going to have, 10 guys breaking out, in my opinion. And then if we look at, let's just look at their offseason additions. And I also put the Twins here. So the Twins, and they did bring back Odorizzi. They did bring back Pineda. They should get some credit for that. But the guys who are brand new to the organization, Avila, he was worth 1.3 WAR last year. Romo I put in here because he was only with the Twins half a year. He was worth exactly half a win with Miami and exactly half a win with the Twins. So I'm kind of putting him in here since, he wasn't with the Twins all last season. He was worth a win. And then Tyler Clippard, 0.7. And then if you look, at the White Sox, obviously Yasmani Grandal is the biggest addition. He gives them yet another 5-win player. Pretty big deal. So the White Sox now have 3 5-win players from last year where the Twins had 0. So again, the upper, I actually gave away a teaser there. We'll get to that in a sec. So the upper echelon of the White Sox roster is pretty impressive. And then they also signed Gio Gonzalez, who's worth 1.4 WAR last year. Keuchel was only worth 0.8 WAR last year, but I think that kind of deserves some further explanation. He sat out on the market forever, signed late with the Braves after the draft, so he basically missed half the season. And, not having spring training to prepare, I don't think simulated games can really truly get you up to speed the way a regular season progression that Keuchel would have would. And then Nomar Mazara, who's an interesting player, but in basically a full season with the Rangers, he was only worth half of a win. But he's 24, 25, another one of those guys that the White Sox are going to be counting on taking a step forward. But, worth noting that he hasn't really shown anything yet. So there's the picture. And the key thing to remember, and you could say this about both sides, really, is it's December 21st. So I would certainly expect the Twins to be active, and there's no reason why Chicago should just be done. I mean, once you've already kind of pushed your team to a point of where it looks like you're about to contend, it starts to make more and more sense to make more moves. So this was a pretty significant contract for Keuchel. So I don't know, without really digging deep into their payroll situation, looking from the outside in, I'm not sure how much room they feel they have. But certainly the Twins, and I've talked about this before, even if they strike out on the free agent market, they're going to make trades. They have a very nice crop of young, unproven players who are already on the 40-man, and then they have another really good-looking crop of guys who are going to need to be protected next off season. And at a certain point, you're just going to run out of room for all those prospects. So again, we talked about Josh Donaldson last night. They are in on him to some degree. It's not super clear. Same can be said about Ryu. There are some other free agents, but it is getting really thin. And that's the other thing about, kind of pointing this out. Yes, it is December 21st, but December 21st, 2019 feels a lot different than December 21st, 2018 or 2017 did. I'll tell you that much. There are a lot fewer free agents on the market this year than there were those years. So, I think I painted a pretty good picture here. So I'm not going to sit here and tell you that the White Sox can't catch the Twins, because that would be basically spitting in the face of what the Twins did from 2018 to 2019. However, I think we can all kind of agree it's pretty remarkable what the Twins did and how many things went right to go from a 78-win team to a 101-win team. So that essentially is what I would equate a potential White Sox jump to be. What do you think? Does this really move the needle? Does the White Sox activity this offseason change how you feel, how aggressive the Twins should be? Let me know.